I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we're going to go into the viewing of what made Maddie run, and then they will share a little bit about who they are and what we would like to get out of today's program. But my intention and our intention for today is to really do some work around suicide prevention and also supporting our teenagers / young adults out of the transition from high school into whatever that might look like, whether, we might be often driving the conversation around college, but we also know that could look like a gap year or going into the workforce, whatever that may look like for your teenager. This is an opportunity to break down the stigma of mental health and receiving help around that. So that's our goal for today. And we're just gonna start off with Christiana Bonnier. I may have messed that up.
Benoit or Benoit.
Benoit. And she, which I was gonna do that anyways, so I apologize for that.
Good.
Our Winchester High School transition specialist, and she'll share a little bit about what that looks like. We also have Marley Antis, who is a graduate from Winchester High School from last year, and she's currently attending school at UMass Boston, and we're really lucky to have her share about her experiences with mental health and managing life outside of high school. We also have Anne Marie Hill, who is a parent and community member of Winchester, so she's going to be sharing her insights. Her children are adult children, and so she's hopefully going to provide a perspective of the big picture. What does life look like 10 years out after high school or whatever that may be. We also have Christopher Robinson and Madison Murphy here from Boston University Support Services, talking about when your young teenager or older teenager comes to college, what support services can look like. And we're really encouraging, we're actually seeing a lot of our students do this now. They go to a campus. We had an IEP meeting yesterday, and we heard one of our shared students had said they're asking about counseling services at his college that he's going. They were like, nobody told him to do it, he's doing it himself, and that's a real just empowering message. And then we are closing out our panel with Melissa Johnson, who attended the Recca Memorial High School and graduated from UMass Lowell, and is now self-employed and figuring life out, right? So we're so glad to see her.
As all of us ones self-employed,
Well,
still figuring out life.
Well, exactly, aren't we all?
Yeah.
So
Everybody join the panel.
thank you for the coalition, Safer for Community, with Dot Butler, Maura Sullivan. Thank you guys for hosting and sponsoring our program. Thank you to WinCam for sponsoring the program. There's lunch in the back. Feel free to enjoy that. We're gonna start with a viewing of What Made Maddie Run, which is a story about a young adult who had attended Penn and died by suicide. So the viewing may take you back, and so I encourage you to take care of your own needs while watching this short viewing and offering you space and whatever you need during that time. And then Nicole and I and the panelists will be available for questions afterwards, and I hope you enjoy the program. Thank you. Christina.
Oh, yeah. Do I just go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Next one.
And then
Click the link.
link.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna just take that in, and I also want to just take a minute to, honor anybody that we may have lost in our personal lives to suicide, any young adults and anybody else. And so I'm really appreciative that we're here together as a community discussing this issue. And I would like to turn the table over. I'd like to actually start with Melissa or Marley, if you guys are open to that, sharing a little bit about who you are and your stories with mental health and your stories of strength. And that's why you're here today, so thank you so much. Melissa, would you like to?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Melissa. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Billerica, Mass. I was clinically diagnosed with anxiety in 5th grade. So back then didn't really know exactly what that meant, what that entailed. My teachers kind of picked up on it. So then I was put on a IEP, so that helped me with my academics and all that good stuff. Transitioning to high school, I was put on a 504, kind of have more of leniency in the education, more help with testing, and then that's when my depression hit in. Just the stigma of the trying to fit in high school and not fitting in with the cool crowd and stuff like that kind of hit hard. Kind of felt I wasn't heard, wasn't understood. So that's when I turned to therapy and turned to my doctors for help, which is super complicated. Right now I feel like the therapy and mental health medical field is a little hard. You're on waiting lists for months and months and months to get to therapists. But there are so many more other options. Talking to your family, talking to your friends, doing things you love. I was a competitive dancer for 20 years, so going to the studio was helpful to get my mind off of things. And then the whole college aspect of life came up. I was never a good student. School just wasn't my thing. Didn't really enjoy learning. Maybe anxious, nervous. So I didn't think college was in the books for me. But my love for dance kind of took over. So I decided I wanted to go to school as a dance major. So I started at Dean College in 2017. I was dancing 8 hours a day with academics on top of it, no time to sit and eat lunch. So it was go, go, go all day. So I finished up my first year there. Started my second year, and I was tired. I was over it, lost my touch for dance, wasn't really wanting to dance anymore. I wanted to eventually own my own dance studio, and I feel like I wasn't getting that where I was. So I was missing home, I was missing my mom, so I wanted to go home. I transferred to the University of Massachusetts Lowell, where I finished up my degree in business administration with a concentration in entrepreneurship. Best decision I made in my life. I realized how unhappy I was there, how my mental health was declining, and I needed to change that, take a step in the right direction, and go to Lowell. I was commuting from home, had my parents, had my dog. It was all great. Yeah, so I finished, and I got my first job out of college. I was an event coordinator for a sports company, and this past January, I unfortunately got laid off. So I'm kind of in that don't know phase of what I'm doing with my life.
Got some positions open at BU right now. So
A little networking here.
we're talking about understaffing and
So yeah, I'm kind of in that tricky situation right now where I'm unemployed, but I do have a creative side where I do love crafting and all that good stuff. So I started my own little Etsy shop where I'm making custom apparel, making custom little gifts for people. So that's kind of my happy place, and I find that very enjoyable. It makes me happy, and I get to do what I love to do. Still teaching dance. I dance still 2 days a week, teaching younger kids, and I don't know what my future looks like right now, but that's okay. We will all figure it out. And I'm always so blessed to have my parents. My mom is my biggest advocate. She is, I'm gonna cry because she's my biggest cheerleader. She watched me in my hard times, and yeah.
Thank you,
What else
Melissa.
to go?
You're good. Thank you.
Doc, you might want to bring up a couple of napkins here,
We're
because we got a long way
We're
to.
getting tissues, don't you
Okay, we got a
worry.
long way to go.
Thank you, Melissa.
You got this.
Marley?
Okay, so my name's Marley.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. My name's Marley, and I grew up all over the place. I moved from Haiti to the U.S. to Arizona to Mass, And when I first came to Winchester, I had like severe depression, but I never really like dealt with it. I kind of just like bottled up my feelings. And I remember just one time I was just like over it, and I kind of reached out. I reached out to Miss Haynes, and I started going to her junior year and just talking about my feelings and all that. And I also opened up to her about a couple things. I was assaulted freshman year in high school a couple times, and I opened up to her about that, and she helped me process those feelings. Yeah. And she taught me to like journal my feelings, and I felt better. And I graduated from high school, and I went to Suffolk. At first, I hated college. Honestly, I hated college. The first semester was so hard. I hated my roommate because we would fight all the time. And there were nights I would wake up and she'd just be staring at me, and it was just like, really creepy.
Yeah.
It was really creepy. And also she was pagan, so that also, all of that kind of scared me, because what? No. But I honestly, it felt really lonely. My first semester there, I was really alone. It was harder to make friends than in high school, because you have class, like when you're in class, you just get up, you go to class, and you just get up and leave. You don't really have time to like talk to people. So I was really alone, and I was really sad my first semester. And I made the decision, I would go home every weekend. I would not stay at the school. I was ready to go home every Friday. And I made the decision to leave Suffolk because I felt alone and I didn't fit in with anyone else. And I transferred to UMass Boston. Honestly, it's so much better. I feel like I fit in a little bit, and I'm meeting new people, and yeah, and I'm still journaling, which is really helping with my feelings. So yeah, thank you, Miss Haynes.
Thank you. So we can get into, more of their story and things to look out for, signs and symptoms and whatnot, but I'd love to hear from the other panelists. Christiana, do you want to speak a little bit about your role and what you see?
Yes, so I'm Christiana. I started working at Winchester High School this October, so I'm the transition specialist there. So I really work with students to kind of navigate their steps after high school, because not every student, and not every student should go to college right after high school, so I kind of help with students who don't go the traditional path. So we work hand in hand with guidance, and it's a lot of fun. But I think kind of the conversations that need to happen long before the decision to go to college, because not every student, I already said, not every student should go, or they shouldn't go immediately after high school. I've worked in different schools, and I feel like in Winchester there is a really big pressure to go to the most prestigious school and to have like the perfect plan when you're 18. I'm 28, or I'm 27, I'll be 28 soon. I feel like I'm just kind of figuring out my career. I made a career move when I came to Winchester. So I feel like it's a lot of pressure on an 18-year-old to make a career decision when they're that young, when they've been in school their whole lives. So I think where my kind of role comes in is to really work with students and to really help them decide if they want to go to college. If they do, which one is the best one to go to, and to really map out resources at the college and choose the college for the resources. Don't choose the college for the prestige factor, because each college has different levels. I went to Assumption College. I actually transferred twice because I had a similar experience to you. I went to Assumption, and they had a great counseling department there. But not each college offers different resources. So to really do your homework and to try to find ones that have the best fit, or to have the honest conversation with yourself and with your family to take a gap year. I hope maybe in years from now, maybe we're all forced to do a gap year after high school, because it's a pretty big decision. And a lot of students are moving across the country, which again at 18 just seems so crazy to me. Some students do really well in college with a fresh start, but some it's the opposite. So to really prepare for what option's the best. So it's kind of like a puzzle. You kind of need to have all your pieces in line. But it's a lot of fun. I feel like it's fun to kind of work with students in the before part. It's always easier to find what works before you go rather than go and kind of problem solve once things happen. It's easier to find something that works for you than go somewhere that doesn't work and try to fix it after the fact. But I also think something that you mentioned is that you can go to college, you can start college, you don't have to stay at the school you start at. I transferred twice. I was supposed to go to University of Maine. I lasted, I think, 2 nights there. I went to a different school in Maine. I lasted a semester there, and it was one of the worst semesters of my life. But I really leaned on my family, and I made the decision to go to Assumption, and that's kind of where things kind of fell in line for me. So I work with students now. I work here because I kind of struggled when in college. So it's nice to kind of work with students who kind of have a similar path. So,
Thank you.
Mhm.
for doing that. Christopher and Madison?
Christopher Robinson, so all the Conjuring of Winnie the Pooh. Let it happen. But I will say this, I think what I can bring especially to this panel is elevating and spotlighting some of the things, especially what both of you have said, to demystify the jargon. One short example. You had mentioned that you'd grown up with all the IEP 504 jargon, many of us come from that. And then the real thing that was impacting was, I just want to fit in with school. And the IEP as structured, the 504 plans as structured, don't necessarily address that. So how are you going to be prepared? How are they going to be prepared? That's where my role comes in at Boston University. I try to clear up jargon. So as you're campus shopping, get familiar with the jargon, the vocabulary of the institutions. You know how I'm enunciating that way? Because it's awkward to try to figure out the jargon of the institution that will change. Like, were we always adjustment counselors? Wasn't there like a term, another euphemistic term for, you deal with flipping a coin is what you do. You deal with rolling the dice. You deal with putting out fires. But then adjustment counselor, at the other institution, what job title is it going to be? So that's what I want to kind of do a little bit here and open up and model for you the kind of person you're going to be looking for on the campuses to catch that pitch when you arrive there. And that's where our work, Madison and I working at BU, a lot of direct service with students, and you can unpack what you're running into. And then how do I articulate that, what the students are experiencing, to the faculty member, so the faculty member can understand your kid because they haven't raised your kid.
Yeah.
I'll pause there.
I think that was wonderful. Just something to add with that. Not everybody is diagnosed at a young age, so diagnoses can come at any time. So even if your child isn't diagnosed, still come to our office, see what offices, resources are available on campus, and that way, if God forbid something happens and they just want to talk to somebody, there's different resources on campus. So I meet with students that haven't had an IEP or 504 plan. Those numbers are quite increasing lately, that are coming to me saying, I've never done this before, I don't know, what is this process? That's okay. Students don't have to have a 504 or IEP to work with resources on campus. So, like Chris said, go out there, see what resources are available, talk, and then just talk with your students and let them know as well. And hopefully they feel comfortable. If they do need something, they know where to go at that point.
And we'll give you some very specific tips, template-like rubric, have your little index card checklist so that you can become acclimated with our jargon. You already know what you're doing. You're figuring things out just like we are. But it'd be nice to kind of identify the patterns in actions, activities, and the patterns in what we're seeing so you can triangulate a little bit more. Like, oh, okay, that's the sweet spot. Let me try this thing because it's high. There's a higher likelihood of having a better outcome than this swimming around that we're doing. I'll lob it over to you.
Well, I was just looking because Amber had asked me to at my age, to speak to my experience supporting adult children and any insights I have for parents going through the process now. And I have to say, when I got the email, they included a link to the video you just watched, which I was in tears and was devastated because there were so many things in there that I saw. I had that child who was the perfectionist, and how he adjusted and how to help him adjust. And I guess the two things that I would want to say is, first, I am unapologetically a hovercraft parent, and I don't say that in the negative way of helicopter parenting that we've all read articles about and how you're not preparing your child for adulthood. I say that in terms of their mental and emotional support. You know your children better than anybody else, and I am not going to apologize if I jump in the car and drive to school because my son called and said, "Oh, I'm not sleeping well because I don't have my pillow." It's not the pillow. He could call Pottery Barn and have one sent to. He's sending everything else to his dorm room. Why not a pillow? My husband loves to tell that story about how I'm like overly involved, and it's like, it wasn't about the pillow. Mm-hmm. He obviously needed to touch home base. Mm-hmm. That's what it was about. And so I just encourage parents to keep that engagement, stay in touch with your kids, read between the lines, and then I guess taking it the next step, that recognize when something's going on that you can't love them out of. It's bigger than what you can give them. It's bigger than the hug. It's bigger than touching home base. And how you go about getting them those resources, tune into that. Have those conversations before your child goes to college about transition, difficulty. If you're having trouble, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Consider whether or not you should have things in place like touching base with resources and permission for them to contact home if something is going on. I know that there have been lots of schools that are looking at that. I'm curious to see what BU's policy is on that. I know as the mother of two boys who played a sport in school, I was in touch with all of the resources because I just wanted to make sure the transitions were happening, and I also wanted to be their advocate and show them how to advocate for themselves. So that transition going from where you can just give them a hug, pick them up, take them to lunch, take them to dinner, but recognize when it's bigger than that and be aware going forward, like what role you can play when they're on campus and how you can interact with the campus as well.
I've got a question. What inclined you to approach Amber? Miss Haynes.
Either is fine.
Either is fine. Yeah.
Well, she's so approachable.
I do have I have an agenda behind that question, but I generally want that authentic because some folks, kids, students might not take that initiative. So I think that might be insightful.
When I first transferred to Winchester, she was the one that helped me adjust to the school. And she just made me feel comfortable the second I met her. And she was so giggly and always laughing.
Giggly, okay, yeah.
It made me feel comfortable, and I was very shy, and I would not speak to anyone. Mm-hmm. And she made me open up to her, and made me feel comfortable doing it. And also, she taught me it's okay to not be okay. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any reflection on that? Not that I don't want to break any foot.
Well, I don't want to have tears either, but it's okay to cry.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I think approach is a really big thing, and like Marley said, she knows me. I am giggly and I am a little bit loud, but I name that right away. I'm like, I am going to be loud because I'm the youngest of 5, and if I'm not loud, then I'm not being heard. So I want to be heard, and that's my hope for people that, when they're transitioning, is that they use their voice. I think that's so important, and that's what my hope was for Marley, is that you had a voice at Winchester High School, and you're using that voice outside of Winchester High School. And I would piggyback off your question, Christopher, around, what led you to making that choice of like, okay, I'm not feeling well, I need to make a decision, because so much we sit in that uncertainty. And I'd love to hear more about that process. Like, what did you recognize that you needed that you weren't getting Melissa or Marley?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm wordy, that jargon, right? So when did you recognize that you wanted to make the decision to change schools or just change out of your situation?
it was just, I was just so sad, and I wanted to have like a good college experience, and I wasn't getting that. And I would talk to my friends, and they'd be having the time of their life, and I just felt like I wasn't getting that, and I was bored all the time, and I didn't have any friends, and I just wanted to change, and I didn't want to stay in that situation and stay sad, because I didn't want that to lead to something like worse. So I made the change. I talked to my parents. They were not happy about me leaving Suffolk, because my dad's like, I'm studying pre-law right now, and the school is very good for that program, and he was not happy. We had the talk, but I told him if I stayed, the outcome would not be well, and he understood and just let me make that decision. Yeah.
So you trusted your gut, and you had the honest conversation, which I think is so hard to do. And, you know, we have about a third of our seniors right now on their senior exploration. And they're figuring it out. They're figuring out, you know, what do I want to do? They have to come to a decision soon. Those deadlines are approaching, and whether it's a deadline to graduate from high school or a deadline to make a decision about college or whatever those next steps are happening, students are feeling a little bit of the pressure, and they want to lean on their parents and their guardians, and there might be that fear of, well, what if they don't agree with me?
Yeah.
Right? And I love how Anne Marie opened the conversation and recognized, like, it's not about the pillow. For me, my freshman year in college, it was about the Diet Pepsi. I was like, Mom, I need Diet Pepsi.
Sick words.
And I got my Diet Pepsi, so that was good. But I also got that hug from my mom, which I needed, and talk more about that. Melissa, did you want to share any more about?
I mean, I completely agree with the whole college situation that she had. It really does sound similar to my experience at college. I kind of realized that I was just tired. I didn't want to go out, didn't want to do anything. Just wanted to stay in my bed and sleep, took naps all the time, and I came to the realization that that's not normal. That is not normal to just want to sleep your day away. So that's when I kind of decided to then move colleges, move back home. And I was more active. I was on the dance team there. I went to school events, which I never did when I was at Dean. Just wanted to meet new people, which I met a great group of friends when I was at Lowell that I'm still in contact with today. But I think my rough patch was post-college and during the pandemic. Just being stuck in a house all day, worried about the world around us, not knowing what the future looked like. I kind of crawled back into that hole of sleeping all day, not getting up, not getting exercise, which lead to gaining weight, less active. So then it came into the issue of like self-doubt, didn't want to look into myself in the mirror, and that's when I kind of was like, okay, this is just going to be a repetitive circle. I need to now step in. I need to take my mental health into make it my first priority. So that's when I reached out to my doctors. They got me on some medications, but I was a little iffy about them, so I wanted to very much learn how to rewire my brain in the way that I thought. So that's when I reached out for therapy, and it was the best decision that I made in my life. I'm such an emotional person.
I have my little self-care soap. I have a thing. I get everybody's got a thing. Do your thing.
But yeah, so I reached out to therapy. I've learned to be my biggest cheerleader, be a self-advocate, put new words into my head instead of those bad words that I keep repeating. I'm able to look at myself in the mirror and say, this is the one body that I have, love every inch of it. But yeah, so I just, that's when the pandemic was much of a low for me, so that's when I reached back out and was like, I need to take it back. And I've never felt happier than I have right now, even with the time of being unemployed and that stuff, so I was trying to figure out life. But I'm just taking my life into my own hands and figuring it out as I go.
Just a thought. Yep. Just to kind of help focus in on some of the patterns that have emerged in this conversation so far. We're going to throw in like little takeaways here and there. The jargon of like hovering and helicopter parent, great, you're encouraged right now to, reach out to your kids. But here's this other thing that seems counterintuitive to that. There are all these institutional regulations that we have at universities and laws, and we say we're not going to tell you what's going on with your kid. So here's a little insight, right? Ms. Haynes, great that you are approachable and happy and giggly, and you have the job description, right? You will have the job description, the title associated with that. But then also, who are the other people on that campus that have the approachable demeanor that can help facilitate that conversation as well? So you're also not looking for a job description, you're looking for qualities, especially when we're talking about international, different identities, gender representation. Look for the qualities of the people, which speaks to this other term, normal, when we were both able to say, I was feeling really sad and that was going on, right? Or just feeling really tired. Okay, there was that vocabulary, right? In order to distinguish, I'm sad, I'm tired, you have to know what your normal is. So journaling now before the crisis happens, before the big change happens. College transit, it's inevitable, that's going to be change. What's my normal, what's my baseline now? Know thyself. Then, as individuals as well as parents, stakeholders, guardians, you can see, there's been a departure. There is a margin of error from my kid's normal. Okay, now we have something to measure, because the faculty, the counselors at that school, they're not going to have the intuition to get your kids normal. You can have that conversation with them. You can disclose, well, here's my experience of my child. They're not going to tell you that much, but they would really love to hear from you. So that's how you kind of work with the system. That seems counterintuitive to that advice. And you can get some insight,
Well, it's funny because I actually did reach out. One of my sons had playing a sport, had an injury, had surgery, and I reached out to the team's advisor and I said, these are the things that I'm saying that I would like some assistance with. And he's never going to ask for this, so I want you to go have a conversation with him about this. Because, it's difficult enough to adjust to college, but adjusting to college on crutches and everything else, there's a lot of different stressors there. But I agree with you. I think one of the most difficult things for parents is that colleges and universities will communicate with you when they're sending the bill.
Keep it
You're
real.
not,
Yep.
and if the bill's not paid, they're going to communicate with you. That's the only thing they're going to communicate with you about. They're not going to send you grades. They're not going to call you and say so-and-so is sick or this is what's going on. It's very limited information that you're getting back from the university. That's not to say, and that's why I'm curious what the policy is at VU. If you have a student who's struggled, what's the protocol for that student and for that student's family? And I know a lot of colleges have been changing over the past 2 decades.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, after some tragedies, have been changing how they communicate with parents and what they are willing to communicate with parents about, what sort of waiver you have to get from a student or what have you. So,
yeah, let's talk about the constraints. Let's talk about the constraints.
So at BU, so majority of schools cannot talk to parents or anyone other than the student. At BU, we can't even confirm or deny if a student walked through our office. So a parent can call and I can't say yes or no to that. With that, when a parent is reaching out, I like to think they're reaching out of concern, not just because they're bored that day. They have other things to do. So I do like to hear students out, but also their family or whoever is calling on students' behalf. Most times what schools will do, at BU we do this, we reach out to the student directly and we let them know, somebody reached out on your behalf, let's have this conversation. We let them know what they said exactly, so the student is aware of that. If the student is saying, I want so-and-so to be in the conversation, as long as the student is present, that should be okay. A lot of schools, they may say, like, the first time meeting, the parent can be involved, but after that, it's up to the student. So that might be, the avenue of a lot of universities.
And why are we so bent about, keeping the parents at a distance? What do you think some of the value, I mean, anybody can share, but what's some of the value that's trying to be elevated by doing that?
With that, what the students are adults at that point, but yet at the same time, what was mentioned earlier,
Except for
they're
paying the
18.
bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Bills.
Then you're gonna hear
So-
from
We're 28, still trying to figure out,
Yeah.
now I'm gonna make my career decision.
Yeah.
So we're adults on paper,
Yeah, so 18 is very young. Students are still trying to figure themselves
The
out.
brain is still developing, too.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do at universities is help students become their own advocate. So with that, sometimes it's okay to have parents or their friend or whoever makes the student feel comfortable to share information to be in that conversation at times. But we also want to respect that the student, for liability reasons, may not want to share everything with somebody. So that's why we don't necessarily share, yes, your child came through the door and the student says to us, I didn't want my family to know. Extreme circumstances, it could be, I don't talk to that person anymore and I don't want them to know that I even go to this university.
I'm insistent on I need to make a change, and my parent might not agree with my change. They might not agree, but I know this ain't working.
So there are times that we, the student is our main concern. Their safety is our main concern, especially at BU. But that pretty much, whenever I talk to colleagues around different universities, that's their answer too. So the student, that is the main priority. Talking to the student, keeping that communication open. So it's okay to reach out and just say, I'm concerned. Can you reach out to my student? Or, I've tried reaching out and saying, go to the office, but maybe they need some, not hand-holding, but a little bit of a nudge. Like Chris and I, we've done it multiple times where a student is just nervous to come to our office, so we meet them on a gorgeous day like today. We're not, twist our arm to go sit outside with the student.
Smoothies.
Smoothies
gets
by
me
all
every time.
means, call us anytime to do that. So that's just, any university, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any concerns.
I see a couple of hands in the room. So there's one that was starting in the back and we'll come
Mike is for
forward.
the recording.
Okay, hi. What if a student is in an immediate crisis? Then do you call the parents? And if you think that there's time for the parent to come or something like that, then would you call the parents? Like, say they had a plan for suicide and they maybe hadn't tried suicide, or they were they were going to be fine, but you had to take them to the hospital. Like, when do you intervene then? Do you leave that to the hospital? Do you leave that to the student? How does that work?
Yeah, let's both lean, but everybody that's done it, we can tell you what our experience is, and why I say it that way is because, as we said, best protocols or best practices are still emerging because we've learned a lot in the last 5 years. We've learned a lot in the last year. Okay, so open to interpretation. In the middle of a crisis, our first point is to actually call professional services to actually come and deal with the student. And our work in disability and access services, let's call it what it is, we're a compliance office. Compliance in that we want to make sure that the legal accommodations and supports that the student is entitled to based upon their diagnosis are met. The faculty can't intervene into that. Okay, we're not a crisis response office. There are offices that do that. There's a behavioral health center, and then there's student health services as well. So there are a spectrum of faculty that really respond in the trenches. And then there's an additional layer in which they call additional emergency response services for those kind of crisis situations. Now that's just the infrastructure at BU, and that's the vocabulary in terms of what we do first in that order. It may be different for another institution, so finding out who does what, what's the 911 of the institution. Now, I've been in circumstances where I've been directed by medical or emergency staff to get the medical staff in contact with the student's identified emergency contact. Okay. So whatever the student and the family have determined, we don't inhibit that regardless of what their protocols are. Does that kind of make sense? And does that speak to where you're going with your question?
You or BU would only contact a parent if they were the emergency contact, and medical professionals said the emergency contact should be notified.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can respond to that. I understand, I believe I understand the intention of the question. What I can respond to right now is I can tell you what we've done, but I'm not going to say that that is the policy going forward. I wouldn't do that because that's not actually responsive to your question. Our big concern is students' well-being, and that the circle that's most supportive to the student be aware of how to do so. We would not obstruct that. And also, Seth, your hand there, but Madison, anything to add to that?
No, so like Chris said, the main concern is the student. So that's really where we go first. Then we contact. Might not be our office directly, but somebody is in contact with the emergency contact.
And all of that, like for example, at our institution, all that emergency contact and profile information, the directives, that's a key term. What are the directives in case of emergency, et cetera, et cetera? That's where you provide what you want to happen.
How do you define an emergency?
Exactly.
And I like how we had talked earlier about what can you do now to help your teenager get set up for success in that transition. So if you have any concerns about your teenager now that, whether they're experiencing an acute mental health crisis or, having those open, honest conversations like, my dear, I would like to be involved in your time at college. While we're looking and exploring the resources, I would also like to talk to you about signing forms to have conversations with your support people. So having that dialogue now, I know in the past we've also talked about if your teenager is taking medication, for example, and you're often being the one that's monitoring that now, we would encourage you to the next quarter that's left in school to help them take lead in doing their own monitoring of the medication so that they can practice that skill building and then have that honest dialogue about supports.
So there was another hand here.
So we were chatting while we were eating about, I have a daughter that's a freshman in college and how that first semester is just rough. So I've gotten those late night phone calls, although your world is ending and I have no friends, and then you can't sleep and they sleep fine. And the next day you find out that it wasn't so bad and I was just hungry because I missed the dining hall or whatever it was. But watching the movie, I'm like, Maddie's story sounded very similar to my daughter's phone calls. So I'm just wondering, what did that family miss? Not that it was their fault, but where could they have, I'm not even sure we're getting the whole story. Like, did she seek therapy? I don't know. Was she a freshman? I don't even know, but where could they have stepped in? What could have made that story different? What could they have done?
I think for me, the big piece that stuck out with that video was where the father said in the therapy session he didn't feel comfortable with Maddie's response.
Yeah.
And so I think if you have a gut feeling, have a conversation with your child, and there's no, I don't think, perfect answer, unfortunately. I wish I could say, you know, do this and that would be the fix. Everybody is different. I like to think of it as a peace sign, trying to find your piece. So everyone has a different piece to it. So someone might, if you think of the peace sign, there's 3 equal parts. Someone might say it's medication helped me. I know you mentioned that therapy helped, or, you know, talking with mom helped me. Trying to find what works best. So having that conversation with your child and just saying, you know, how are you feeling? You know, trying to be as transparent as possible. Express your concerns.
Yeah. And again, that was the point I was making initially, which is you know your child better than anybody else. And I watched that movie when they sent the link, but then I got on because there are several other links.
That's right.
That the siblings have started a foundation, interviews with the siblings, with the father. And in one of the interviews I watched, they commented on they didn't even know she could take a semester off. And if they had known that, maybe they would have insisted she just take spring semester off and stay home and get some counseling. So it's looking into the resources and trusting your gut. And, you know, I think that it was devastating to watch that movie, but I understand what you're saying. How do you change an outcome like that? Is there a way? And who knows? But
And differentiate, like, is this just freshman stress? Like, you just you were like, this isn't the right school for me.
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out, like, are we in a state of crisis or are you just homesick?
And she found the option, right? The alternative. She came home, regrouped, changed schools. You did the same thing. Yeah. Came home, regrouped, and changed schools. And, you know, that's what I think is so devastating about that story, because I think they're haunted by the prospect of
What if? Yeah.
what if.
And I think another thing, I recently spoke to a graduate from a couple of years ago, is just, again, knowing your resources. For an example, the student I spoke to who was attending Northeastern, she was also kind of struggling with the adjustment with school and the stress. And she said to me, well, I didn't realize at Northeastern I could have unlimited amount of free counseling. And she wasn't even aware of that. And she told her sibling, and her sibling attends there as well. And they're like, really? I have that? I have access to that? And that student was very resourceful and really exploring what is available to me. What do I need to feel successful and comfortable here? And she was able to explore that and find what is available to her. So I always say to students, when you're looking at your different colleges and exploring all of these places, make sure they have what you need. Is there free counseling? Is there access to counseling? Is there academic support that you might need as well to be successful? So looking at, yes, if you're into sports, if they have the sports you're interested in, but also the supports that you need too.
And also, let them know it's okay to feel like, I made this decision, not a great fit. That's okay. You know, we've all taken jobs or done different things in life where we're like, thought it was going to be better, this isn't working for me. And it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change schools. It's okay to come home and regroup. It's okay. And I think a lot of kids, especially in a town like Winchester, because there is a lot of pressure in this town to succeed and excel and
Stay the course.
Stay the course. Stay the course. And this is going to take me off the course if I take a semester off. That's okay. You know, and if they hear from their parents that, you know, that's okay.
The other thing is there's so many resources. So not knowing all the resources as the student is coming onto campus for the first time is okay. But having, that's, you know, I hate to say this, but that's going to be their new home for a little bit. It'll never be the same home as where they grew up, because I don't want to replace that for them, but that is going to be their home for whether it be 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, however long their journey is. But try to find a resource that fits them. So whether it be somebody that they just connect with, like Amber, you know, like bubbly personality, she's very easy to open up to. That could be a great resource. If she's not the correct resource to go to, I'm sure she's not just gonna shut her door and be like, yeah, bye Madison, and you know, good luck with that. She would be like, let me help you with this. So having that comfortable person that your student feels comfortable to say, like, I need something, can you help me find this? That's a huge resource as well.
And we'll give you some jargon to figure out how to locate those things. See a hand here, there's another hand here, but comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in as like the student perspective of all this.
Yeah.
Like UMass Lowell is a huge school. There's 3 different campuses within the school, and it's all kind of just spread out. I had no idea there was resources at Lowell. I kind of just went there, did school, went home, did nothing, and I didn't really think about like reaching out to anyone there. So that's when I kind of like turned towards like my family. So like they don't market or put it out there that those services are available to you. And still to this day, not maybe a few months ago, I graduated over a year ago, and I just realized that those services were available for me. So like I never knew, I never took advantage of that. So it's kind of hard being in such a large school with so many people. You kind of get lost. So that's when I really like focused or relied on my family doctors, like that type of realm. But I wish I would have known sooner that that was an option.
Trust that too.
So just building off what you said, everybody seems like, you know, the resources are there.
Yeah.
There might be weights, but you know, the theme is a lot of people don't know about them. So I know you described meeting with students, maybe one-on-one, but and I know, you know, it's an exciting time and you want to talk about applying and all that stuff, but do you meet with the seniors at the high school or students as a group or a class to discuss this type of stuff? I mean, just
how do we get
them,
the word out?
Yeah, like making them aware, like, I mean, I know there are nights about how do you get your recommendation from your physics teacher or whatever, but, I mean, is that something you all do or would consider doing? I don't know.
So in the past, we did also have this program for our students too. It just didn't work out this year to have it, but we're going to have it hopefully in the fall. But we do meet with our students, and even when there's pockets of workshops where they might try to focus all on like college stuff, Amber and we always try to put our piece in too, to say, hey, we are your supports, who we are in the building. I predominantly work with the sophomores and juniors this year, and Amber works with the freshmen and seniors. So we follow the grades, so it's not a new face every year where they have a new counselor. So Amber and I do try to make sure we are put into different workshops every time. The guidance counselors also have.
Yeah, I would say, I would echo what Nicole's saying, and I would say that the guidance counselors, I would really lean on your child's guidance counselor, because they're really the experts as well. Like, they know the ins and outs of all of this, and they do a really good job. And honestly, before even coming here today, I have a senior that I'm working closely with, and there were some tears in the office, and the guidance counselor swooped right in and was like, let's talk to your parents and figure this out around decisions and resources and all of that stuff. So it's more, it's as a senior, they're really one-on-one conversations. There are the assemblies, and I think even out of last year's assembly when we had this, we walked away with a handful of juniors at the time coming and saying, I see myself in Maddie, and I want to start coming to you for counseling, and really blown away by that, right? So my hope and intention is that we're making a difference, and that they're doing a really good job. Our teens and our people here on the panel are really recognizing that there is a need, and that we need to use our voice to get that help. And then we're adapting, and I think our guidance counselors, again, are really having those one-on-one conversations. I know also in there, before a student can leave the walls of Winchester High School, they do an exit interview with their guidance counselor, and they want to give resources, but then they say, what did you miss? So we're often adapting what we need to do in high school too.
And my comment was more to see how, as parents, we can help you amplify those messages, right?
Yeah, and the partnerships with
Yeah, and the partnership. So like I know we all get a bajillion emails, but I remember the one about the recommendations, but like even you know, if it said, hey, we were part of this assembly, you know, so we can reinforce and build on what you're telling us.
Yeah. It's so much about a community, right?
And the other piece too I want to add is that the guidance counselors work very closely with students too. So if there's something going on, and even if the guidance counselor sees that maybe something's off, just like how the parent said, like Maddie seemed off, like there was something different. And that's where Amber and I would also get a referral for a student. Like, hey, Nicole, Amber, can you check in with the student? Something seems off. Teachers are noticing something's off as well. So we do work together as a community to support students in the high school. So
I'm going to keep it short because I know there was a question out here. How you can help all the high schools. We are also still understaffed, even though we are the experts. We don't have the marketing campaign and the marketing staff of Amazon. We're also in a paradox of schools, public school systems especially, that are underfunded, and we're asked to streamline, reduce redundancy, when actually redundancy of messaging is what will get messaging about the resources across, so you don't have to wait how many billion years later, like, oh, we had that? Redundancy, that's what works about social media. It's the same videos and what that keep coming up. So how do we address that? Plead with your PTOs. Often the programming for your parent-teacher organizations or associations are to get, you know, certain kind of programming in the schools that's STEM related, or we got this thing going, and there's a circus, and we're going to get the Museum of Science. That's great too. And get some of the colleagues and peers from the community that our colleagues here recommend to come into the school and insert Trojan horse some programming that's PTO funded as well. And there are some gimmicky things that'll be trending on the TikTok or the Instagram or whatever that will keep flashing up in front of your kids while they're in these other spaces, so that in the moment of crisis where the cognitive load atrophies, they'll still be able to recognize, oh, I'll be able to call up, well, what's the jargon, what's the brand, what's the thing look like? Now I can have, with whatever energy or sadness I still have, I can get up and at least walk over to that place. So PTOs, that's one way to kind of be, you know, like use a Trojan horse kind of approach.
And the coalition's doing that.
And the coalition.
Yeah.
Boom, so,
That's
you
what they
know,
do.
yeah. Rinse and repeat.
Thank you.
So mine is more of a comment and just sort of piggybacking on some of the things that Anne Marie has said, that because my kids are older, I have one who's a junior in college and one who's out of college. But my older one who was out of college, you know, struggled, and I just want to say to other parents that are thinking about this, I mean, a lot of things came up for us. For one, he was diagnosed with ADHD his freshman year in college, not in high school. He did fine in high school. And he went to services at his college and said, I'm not managing well, and then got in touch with us and said, I'm not managing well, you know, what can we do? And then once we figured that out, then we had to rethink, all right, so what's your plan, you know, for getting through school? Now, part of that plan for him, and this is what I never would have understood as somebody that went to college myself for 4 years and graduated on time. Everything went relatively smoothly. But kids are different, and so my son went some semesters part-time. He took a full year off, 2019, and worked in a restaurant. He came back, you know, so energetic and ready to be back in college, and he just graduated in December 22. His original graduation date was May 2020. matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So, you know, I think that's the thing that's hard when you're going in, to have that perspective that, you know, you think as a parent, you know, you want your kids to be successful, you want them to go and do great in college, but really your goal is to help them figure out how to manage on their own and to get through and learn in the process. And I will say that it's, you know, it's been a big journey for my son, but he, you know, he's 25 and he just graduated from college. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. He's now going to figure out, he's working in a coffee shop, you know, figuring out what the next step is. And I think the thing is to kind of pull that pressure off this sort of idea of, you know, they need to get through in 4 years, or it's so expensive, we can't afford more. Or, you know, what do you mean you only want to take 2 or 3 classes this semester?
Well, that's, I mean, the word you're using, which I love, is it's a journey, right? And everybody has their own journey. It is not, we are not made to follow the same track in life. None of us have followed the same track in life, and we've all ended up in the same room together. So emphasizing to our kids that it's their journey, and it's okay to take a detour, maybe take a gap year, take a year off. I took 3 years off between college and law school way before they were called gap years. I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I tried a couple of different careers, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to go this path. And that's, you know, that's what we should be emphasizing, and that's a great word for it. It's a journey, and we all have our own. And I think if kids understand that that's okay, and that their parents support that, I just, you know, we all want our kids to be happy and healthy adults one day, right? And how we get them there is the key, you know.
Any other thoughts to add to that? You have a question?
I have a question for the two of you. So I was wondering, I know my daughter's at school, and I had a bill issue where I sent a check for a payment, and it was cash, and it still sent me email and saying, I owe this much. And when I called the school, they were like, I can't talk to you. And, and I'm like, what?
But you sent me
I was
the
so
bill.
frustrated. And then I need the daughter's permission to look at your account. And so I had to call my daughter and ask her to give me access, allow me, you know, there's a portal for the student to allow the parent to look at the bill. So I was really pissed. But I'm questioning this because when they're in high school, they're home with you, you know their normal behavior, you know how to see whether it's a, you know, scary pattern or it's just a one-day thing. But when they're out in college, you don't know. And it's hard to determine, especially when they live on campus. So if they have that thing with the billing where the student allow the parent to, allow the school to talk to the parent about this, why can't they do that for, you know, any other things, behavior, or like I know, there's a long story, my daughter's a RA, and it's a small world. She's a RA for one of the kids that is my neighbor. And 2 years ago,
You're answering the question, but go ahead.
2 years ago, my daughter told me that he got in trouble. I'm friends with the mom. I was afraid to say anything to her. I tiptoed the issue. Like, hey, so how's he doing? And she's like, oh, he's fine and all that stuff. She didn't even know that he got busted with the campus police for alcohol on campus. So I feel that's wrong. I mean, for major stuff like that, the parents should have, especially when we pay the bill. And I don't care if they're 15, I don't care if they're 25. If I'm paying, I want to know. So why can't the school, each of the colleges should have a portal where the parent and the student agree that, okay, yes, these are the issues, that red flag, I should know about it, the students should tell me about it, if not, the school should inform me. Why can't they do that? Because it will prevent a lot of, you know, suicidal thoughts and all that stuff. It really does, because I feel like, I think back 2 years ago, I'm like, maybe I should have told my neighbor, because he got into alcohol problems a year later and even now. So I felt like maybe I should have said something, but I felt like I'm not it's not my business.
Right,
But
right.
she needed to know something.
She didn't exactly, but the school the son didn't say anything, and the school, and this is
Yeah.
campus.
I used this gesture
Because you're
before.
restrained.
Yeah.
Let me respond, again, my personal professional experience. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened in this story for privacy reasons. I can say that I've personally experienced what I'm about to tell you at least 5 times between when COVID started to now. At least 5 times. Okay, so I'm just one to exponentialize that among us other professionals. There are students who have imbibed alcohol and they're drinking because of their parents. There are students who come to our office who don't want to be in communication with their guardians or their siblings or the uncle because of abuse. There are students who have moved to this other side of the country and are enduring seasonal depression, seasonal affect disorder, being in the cold because they're on the other side of the country from the community that they came from. So I'm going to ask kind of a rhetorical question. How do we do the right thing by those students?
Well, you should give them, the parent and the student, the option. Because in my mind, there's a lot of these cases on campus that could have been prevented if the parent know in advance.
That is true.
And it's not to get the kid in trouble, it is just to open up the communication and have an understanding of what my responsibility is and what your responsibility is, and let's come to an agreement. You're leaving us out, that's causing our children problems down the road that you cannot fix or you're not willing to fix, and it just...
Respectfully, I'm going to push back.
I do understand that there are some students that
Not
want
some,
to get away
it's not
from-
some. As a result of COVID especially, our numbers have exponentially increased. There's a lot more students that you're not aware of. You're aware of your kid. We're seeing all of them. We love your children, and I so look in my face, I so desperately need your support. I want to open up those portals and click those buttons. But I'm also hyper aware, a little bit of background. I'm an American Sign Language interpreter by background in education and training. Okay. I've had to be the voice of when a deaf parent has called the university to ask about their kid. It has actually come out of my voice, out of my vocal cords in translation, that the kid doesn't want to speak to them, their own kid, communicating through me as an interpreter to say, you're harming me. So that kind of thing, I don't have an answer that's going to respond to everybody. I'll give you this though, and it kind of speaks to the question earlier about are we communicating when there's crisis? One of the things that we're trying to do better at, and actually we do have a program, is a leave of absence program. Often students don't know that during a leave of absence, they can still engage with services of the university. So when you're on a leave of absence, it does not mean you can have absolutely no contact with the school. The student clubs, the other events that are happening on campus, you're absolutely welcome to attend and participate and still keep that engagement with your students. And that has become critical. I bring that up is because there are students that are staying in Boston who don't want to go home, who don't want their parents or their guardians to see what they're doing, but they need the engagement, but the academic part is too much, but they still want to stay connected with their student groups and friends, and then they take a job in the city. That's my reality. Now tell me what to do with that. Give me an answer.
Well, what if the student is, yes, you can talk to my mom and dad, like obviously you're willing, I'm willing to talk. If the student's like, yeah, my mom really cares about me, then can it be a three-way conversation, or then?
Madison has parents in the middle of the meeting per permission of the student.
Okay,
They're on the phone.
So is that
They're in the
something
Zoom
you
meeting.
ask every student, like, hey, how involved do you want your parents to be?
Yes, sometimes, and if this does happen, don't be offended. Sometimes
It's gonna
is one of
hurt,
those-
but
yes,
be kind.
it will be.
It's
but
gonna hurt, but be kind.
Sometimes it will be that we say, I'm going to speak to your student first,
Mhm.
and then we'll invite you in afterwards. I've had that where the student's like, yep, I don't mind if they come in, be part of the conversation, no problem at all. And then we walk to my office and they're like, please do not have them come back. Like, I do not want them. They want me back.
And there's a little bit of the joking part of
but,
that,
like,
but also there are
it is
some
a concern,
really critical reasons that it's breaking our heart.
Yeah.
But as professionals on the front line, that doesn't mean that we're better than you are. I'm just saying we're seeing it more frequently. That's what I mean by professional. We're
Very
seeing it more frequently. I see a hand there and then,
At least in my daughter's second year in college, as onboarding as a freshman,
Mhm.
there's a point that she could assign something that I could have access to her.
That's right.
Her academic records and her medical records. She refused to do that. So all the parents who aren't there yet, get them to do before they get there.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
sharing that, because I do think, what I love hearing is everybody's bringing their thoughts and feelings to the table, and their questions and their curiosities and their fears.
Yeah.
And I love that we're able to sit around this table and have a conversation
Mhm.
and create that connection, because there are steps that you can take. Sign that form beforehand, partner with your high school counselors to say, can you encourage them to sign that with me later on, right? And it takes a village, right? And I think we are coming back around to that everybody has a role in your teenager's life, and I may not be the cup of tea for somebody, but that is where Mrs. Giselle comes in, or a parent comes in, or a coach comes in, right? And so my hope, and this is what I heard from Melissa and Marley as well, is that as soon as they found a connection to something, that is what also helped them create a voice. And with the partnership that we can create both at the college level or workforce, whatever community member, whatever that partnership that we can create, I really truly think like that is going to be the meaningful difference that we can create to support our young people in a thriving world when sometimes they might be struggling. And to speak to, well, when do I get help, or when do I reach out? I think, one, I loved the people on the panel saying, trust your gut.
Mhm.
We forget to trust our gut, right? And we say that you know your child best, but I would say also your child knows them best, right? And so when you may be spinning, when they're spinning, you might have to step back and say, are you okay? Right? And asking that question twice.
Yeah.
Are you okay? And then saying, are you okay?
Yeah.
Right? And making that conversation pause a little bit before reacting,
Mhm.
and partnering with your teenager to say, how intense is this? How long has this episode been lasting? Right? So we look at, is this typical behavior for my teenager, for a teenager? Is this Amber being Amber right now? And or is this a bit more that, are there warning signs that we need to be paying attention to? And what is the intensity, the duration, and the frequency of the episodes? I think those are so important, and also speaking to a young person's strength. We have 2 young adults sitting here with us today because of their strength. They rallied for me. One of our young adults, we had a different young adult that was coming to speak today, and for whatever reason they weren't able to show up, and I was like on the call with both of these, like, can you guys come here, please? I need you. And they rallied, and they're here, and I'm so thankful. My hope is, we're gonna pause here, but my hope is we'll continue the conversation. This will be recorded. I want to thank the Winchester Coalition for Safer Community. I want to thank WinCam. And I want to thank our panelists. So thank you guys so much. Let's give them a big round of applause.
I wanted to fulfill a promise. I did say that there was going to be like a tip sheet rubric kind of thing. Please write this down. stevefund.org, S-T-E-V-E, stevefund, F-U-N-D.org, stevefund.org. Here's why it's valuable. At least 2 reasons. There are many, but 2 that come to mind. Getting through the jargon. I use it a lot. The Steve Fund, as well as the Jet Foundation, they give templates to institutions, high school, higher ed, college, where they give the jargon, the templates, the Instagram, social media tip sheets to all of these universities. Good. So you can go to that one source and go, okay, that's the jargon that they're using. So when I'm shopping, I'll use this jargon to figure out what these people are offering in terms of services. All right, that's one great idea. Second is you can make your own little workshops at home. You can curate some things with your PTO, and there was a coalition that was referred to, as well. So when it comes to PowerPoint slides or printouts, that'll help you guide your conversation at home to make those plans, to get, the signature so I can have a conversation and not deal with paying people and then they're not talking to you. That's ridiculous. Not ridiculous, ridiculous. And then the rage, anxiety on top of my kid's not feeling well. Okay, so let's rehearse that. Use the material that you've already paid for. The universities are getting it, the high schools are getting it, and then you can also go online, Steve Fund, and within the resources, there's an area called Family Corner. Christopher Robinson Pooh's Corner? Family Corner, right? Go to the Family Corner. There are templates, PowerPoint slides, handouts that you can do at home to rehearse sifting through the jargon. Metabolize that stuff, and that's where we're going to drop the mic.
Thank you, guys.